Something about memories of childhood. So good, so good. Some just dreams you try to hold back, and it just can't stop the way. Yeah. Pieces, pieces of a dream. Got me going round. Pieces, little pieces, pieces of a dream. Got me going round, round, round. Round and round and round we go. So strong. Pieces, pieces of a dream. Got me going round. Pieces, pieces of a dream. Got me going round. Some will make you happy. Some will make you sad. Some will make you wish for your goal. Some will make you glad. Dream in the daytime. Dream in the night. Hold you tight. Daydream when you're lonely. Dreams will make you mad. Yes. Let yourself down easy. Better believe. Give it all the love you got. something about memories of childhood. So good, so good. Some just dreams you try to hold back, and it just can't stop the way. Yeah. Pieces, pieces, pieces of a dream got me going round. Pieces, pieces, little pieces, pieces of a dream got me going round, 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 round and round we go. So strong.
You actually hadn't mentioned it before. So thank goodness you had. Right, ladies and gentlemen, please may you stand for the playing of our national anthem. Thank you. Please be seated. I must say there will come a day when the entire room will sing that anthem loudly and we won't have to be... and I saw a couple of you singing. Unfortunately, I don't have any Zida T-shirts to throw at you, but I'm sure I could get a couple later. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You can do better than that. It's the trade fair. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. That's more like it. Really appreciate it. Honorable guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the Zimbabwean Impact Investment Dialogue, convened under the theme Building Zimbabwe's Impact Investment Ecosystem, Mobilizing Private Capital Towards Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. On behalf of our conveners, United Nations Development Programme Zimbabwe, UNDP, and Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, ZIDA, allow me to extend a warm welcome and sincere appreciation to all our distinguished guests and speakers joining us today. My name is Andy Hodges. I will be your MC for today. So if there are any issues, please come to me. Now, before we get into any acknowledgements, a little bit of housekeeping. The toilets are right opposite the reception, the desk that we just came in now, the secretariat desk. Just in front of there's ladies and male toilets. But also, if there is any emergency, straight past, if you go to your left, straight through, there's an exit into the car park, okay? You can use that exit to the car park. If there's any problem with that, you can use the other exit, which will take you out. But the trick is if you go to the car park, we will gather for the case that there's any emergency. Of course, hopefully there will not be, but at least now you know exactly what to do, and please be calm if there is any issues. I'd like to have some acknowledgements. Engineer Tafazwa Muguti, Permanent Secretary, Presidential Affairs and Devolution in the Office of the President. Ambassador Rudo Chitiga, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Skills, Audit and Development. Sam Shamuriwo, Director of Environment at the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife. Senior government officials here present, welcome. His Worship, Senator David Coulthard, the Mayor of Bulawayo, Dr. Innocent Mate, Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Dr. Ayodele Odusola, Resident Representative, UNDP, Zimbabwe, Mr. Chala Getachew, Deputy Resident Representative, UNDP, Zimbabwe, Misila Basizo Chizwina, Chief Investment Promotion Officer at ZIDA, Professor Ashok Chakravarti, Chief Advisor to the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, members of the Diplomatic Corps here present, welcome, Mr. Marcos San Pablo, Managing Director, Cross Boundary Group, Dr. Cornelius Dube, Chief Economist, Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, Ms. Josephine Takundwa, Deputy President, Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Clifford Mtameri, Executive Head, Corporate and Institutional Banking, National Building Society, Ms. Isabel Nyoka, Head of Mining Finance, Ecobank Zimbabwe, business leaders here present, ladies and gentlemen, and of course members of the media. I'd also like to recognize our technical partners, Cross Boundary Group. Please give Cross Boundary Group and yourselves a very big round of applause. Thank you. Now, today's dialogue comes at a very important moment for Zimbabwe. Of course, as you know, we're setting out a very ambitious 2030 agenda, transforming the country into an upper-middle income economy through inclusive and sustainable growth. But achieving this requires mobilizing significantly greater volumes of capital, private capital, alongside public investment. Zimbabwe, of course, is very good, I believe, at promoting investment in our country. We have seen a lot of investors come in, and in fact, I was very shocked. I don't know if any of you have driven past ZITFO yesterday, that it is full. It is so many investors there, so many buyers, so many foreigners coming in to see what Zimbabwe has to offer. So promotion of our investment landscape is very important. However, there is one area that we can't forget about, and that, of course, is the ecosystem around that investment and impact investment. Now, what exactly is impact investment? I'm sure you'll hear from the speakers, but very simply, it's capital deployed with the intention to generate measurable social and environmental impact alongside financial returns. It represents an important mechanism to close the gap of Zimbabwe's SDG financing gap. So capital deployed with the intention to generate measurable social and environmental impact, along with, of course, making money. That's very important, because capital obviously also seeks to make money. We're going to be talking a lot about that. And some of the issues I think we must keep in our minds foremost is that Zimbabwe's investment conversation must be a lot more around the ecosystem building, not only just promotion, as I've just said. We need SDG-aligned capital, which requires confidence, evidence, coordination, and credible pathways. The SDGs are so critical, ladies and gentlemen. I think no one in this room, I think, can deny how critical it is to try and achieve the SDGs as much as we possibly can. Everything falls under the SDGs, to be frank. Public institutions, finance institutions, investors, and the private sector all have distinct but complementary roles in that ecosystem. All right, so what we're doing today is kickstarting a conversation. We're starting a dialogue. We'll hear a report later from Cross Boundary. We're starting a dialogue to understand we're moving this ecosystem conversation forward and how we can really operationalize it. We're going to be looking at practical engagement, of course, sustained dialogue after this, which I'm sure UNDP and ZIDA will continue going. But without further ado, let's get into today's program. I do apologize for starting a bit late. We were waiting for a few guests of honors, but now everyone is here. So bear with me, but I will be dashing through the program, as you know, with my normal efficiency. So without further ado, let us move into our program. To introductory and opening remarks, please put your hands together and welcome the Chief Investment Promotion Officer from ZIDA, Ms. Silabasiso Chizwina. Come on, keep clapping. It's a long walk. It's a long walk. Welcome. She's not as tall as me.
Thank you, Andy. And if you just allow me to write on the protocol that Andy has said this morning, this room is full of very important people who are likely to have a very big impact on the impact investment sector, because it is a sector that we're setting up in Zimbabwe in the next few months, and hopefully it flows into the next few years. So good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, development partners, members of the diplomatic community, private sector leaders, and esteemed investors. As Andy said, my name is Silibaziso Chizwina, the Chief Investment Promotion Officer at the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, here representing our CEO, Tafazwa Chinamo, who unfortunately is working on another program at the trade fair. It's been a very hectic week, as some of you may know. I'm sure you're all wondering why I am standing here representing the agency and why our brand is appearing next to the UNDP brand. So a few months, it's almost a year now, I think maybe a few months ago, Alex and his team, I think later on Dr. Chala came on board, came through to ZEDA and started having discussions with us about what kind of impact investment was having in Zimbabwe, what kind of investors were we getting into the country. And funny enough, in our program for this year and our strategy, we had recognized the fact that we've been getting a lot of inquiries from impact investors who couldn't make headway into Zimbabwe because we haven't set up a framework that acknowledges that kind of finance, that makes it easy for that kind of finance to come into Zimbabwe and actually stay in this country. And so the discussion then went on to become an MOU, which is now morphing into this big initiative where we are engaging stakeholders and working to see how in a few months' time we'll be promoting in a live manner impact investment into the country. So it is my honor to welcome you to this Zimbabwe Impact Investment Dialogue convened under the theme Impact Investments for SDG-aligned private capital. Allow me to extend our sincere appreciation to our partners, the United Nations Development Programme, for their continued collaboration in advancing impact investment in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is currently implementing the National Development Strategy 2, which places strong emphasis on private sector-led growth, value addition, infrastructure development, and inclusive economic transformation. Within this context, we believe that the mobilization of sustainable and impact-oriented private capital is not optional. It is essential to drive the NDS2. Public resources alone cannot meet the scale of investment required to drive economic development or transformation. As such, our focus as a country must be on creating an ecosystem that enables capital to flow efficiently into priority sectors while delivering measurable development outcomes. Impact investment provides a practical and strategic pathway to achieve this. It will allow us to align commercial viability with social and environmental impact, particularly in sectors such as agriculture, agro-processing, renewable energy, and infrastructure development. These are sectors or subsectors that are not only central to NDS2, but also present clear investable opportunities for both domestic and international capital. As ZEDA, our mandate is very simple: to promote, facilitate, and coordinate investment into Zimbabwe. In collaboration with UNDP, this is what we're doing. We are advancing a structured approach to building Zimbabwe's impact investment ecosystem, focusing on mapping investment opportunities aligned with SDG outcomes, identifying the barriers to this capital coming into the country, developing a pipeline of investment-ready and bankable projects, and strengthening coordination between investors, government, and development partners. This dialogue is therefore not a standalone event. It forms part of a broader national process aimed at positioning Zimbabwe as a credible destination for impact capital. Today's program reflects this intent. Together with the UNDP team, we'll be sharing emerging insights from the SDG Impact Investment Mapping exercise that we've undertaken in the last few weeks, engaging directly with investors who may be sitting in the room, and creating a platform for candid dialogue on how we can collectively unlock capital at a large scale. Your perspectives are therefore critical in shaping this narrative or the next phase of this work. At ZEDA, we remain committed to strengthening the investment climate through coordination across the government ministries. UNDP will tell you how we're doing this, improving our regulatory implementation efficiencies, facilitating investor entry and establishment, but finally also supporting investors after establishment through our aftercare programs, and then working with them to grow their investments in the country. Our objective remains clear: to ensure that Zimbabwe is not only open for business, but investment ready with clear frameworks, credible opportunities, and responsive institutions. Your presence here today is a strong demonstration of partnership and confidence in Zimbabwe's investment capital and potential. We encourage open and constructive engagement as we work together to shape a more coordinated, transparent, and investable ecosystem. We have the opportunity to position Zimbabwe as a destination of impact-driven investment, delivering both financial returns and meaningful development outcomes. I would therefore like to thank you for taking time out and look forward to a productive engagements. And also just take this opportunity to invite you to join us, the UNDP, at the ZITF, so that you get better perspective of what we do as an agency and how we work with the United Nations Development Program. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, you can do better than that, ladies and gentlemen. Give her a big round of applause. Ms. Chiswina, she's obviously Chief Investment Promotion Officer, ZIDA. There is one thing I did forget, of course, and I'm looking out at all the people who are now streaming online. You can find the link on the UNDP Twitter account. So welcome to all of you who are joining us online. Welcome to Zimbabwe Impact Investment Dialogue. UNDP and ZIDA, as was just explained, of course, by the Chief Investment Promotion Officer, ZIDA, implemented the SDG Impact Investment Project. Now, this is aimed at developing a national SDG investment map, strengthening the enabling environment for impact capital, and building an ecosystem capable of attracting domestic and international investors. Where better than ZITF 2026 for the UNDP and ZIDA to unveil this? So without further ado, let's hear from the resident representative of UNDP, Dr. Ayodele Odusola. Please, big round of applause. Doctor? Oh, come on, guys. Welcome, sir.
I thought I'm competing with you.
Yeah, I thought you were. Yeah, just about.
Okay, just about. Thank you very much. Yeah, good morning to you all.
Good morning.
It's as if the room is sleeping. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're welcome, Your Worship. Well, let me ride on all the protocols that have been established, but permit me to just start by appreciating ZIDA in partnering with UNDP on Zimbabwe Impact Investment Dialogue. And on that note, I want to also appreciate the presence of His Worship, Senator David Kota, the Mayor of Bulawayo. I want to also appreciate the presence of my dear brother, Engineer Tafaswa Muguti, Secretary, Presidential Affairs and Devolution in the Office of the President, my dear sister, Ambara Asado Rudo Chitiga, who is the Secretary of the Permanent Secretary of the Skill Audit, and also another brother from another mother, the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Dr. Innocent Mache. I also want to really appreciate the representative of ZNCC, Mrs. Josephine Takundwa, Deputy President, Zimbabwe National Chambers of Commerce. I want to appreciate all our panelists, including Professor Ashok Shakvarati, who is the advisor to the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Isabella Nyoka, Head of Mining Finance, Ecobank Group, Dr. Cornelius Dube, Chief Economist, Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, and Mr. Clifford Imtameri, Executive Head, Corporate and Institutional Banking, National Building Society. And all of you that are here today, permit me and forgive me if I have not mentioned your name. You are all very important, particularly our consultant, who is going to take us through the emerging insight on the SDG Impact Investment Map in Zimbabwe, Mr. Marcos San Pablo. Managing Director, Cross Boundary Group. It's really a pleasure for us to have you in Zimbabwe. I want to use this opportunity to thank the convener of this particular event, ZIDA. This is a journey that has started, as she rightly mentioned earlier on, about a year ago, in terms of where we are now. And I want to really say this is a kind of partnership on shared national development priorities, which is bringing together representatives of the public institutions, representatives of the private sector, investors, development partners, and innovators. And I want to also underscore the fact that what we are doing today is not about discussing on how to mobilize capital. It's not talking about capital by itself, but we are discussing how we build confidence and trust, as well as assembling opportunities and how we unlock opportunities for Zimbabwe's development. This is how the entire discussion is going to be shaped. But allow me to just give some kind of a short historical perspective on the SDG Impact Investment Map. I was in New York for 12 years, serving as one of the functions as the chief economist for Africa. And I had the opportunity of visiting all the permanent reps. That means each of the 54 African countries' embassies to the United Nations in New York. And each time I get to their offices, I see the brochure of most of the Asian countries, European countries, and the Americas on their table. The investment brochure of their own country was never on their table. And when I went round, I called the ambassador of South Africa, the ambassador of Nigeria, the ambassador of Egypt. And I said, hey, what is wrong with you guys? You are promoting other countries' investment opportunities, but you are not promoting yours. So we started the event, and shortly after that, I was redeployed out of New York to South Africa, and we completed the process. The first one was launched in Brazil in 2021, and the second one globally was launched in South Africa, and the first to be launched in Africa. As we speak today, about 37 countries have already launched the SDG Impact Investment Map. Now, but I thought that I say, hey, how can we make Zimbabwe's one very unique? Unique in the sense that it's one of the very few countries that is currently going through debt arrears clearance. And because of that, investors' appetite is always very low in countries that are currently experiencing debt arrears, that we need to do it differently. And that's why we said, okay, a way of doing this is bringing those that know where the shoes pinch. And that is why we have the assemblage of various experts. And that's why Cross Boundary came on board, because they have been able to strike a number of investment deals with several countries. And we said, okay, we will not do it alone with those that will be blowing grammar, but we'll do it with those that know what investment entails. And that is why we are here today. Why is SDG Impact Investment Map, why does it really matter for Zimbabwe? One, it is something that we consider to be an instrument that supports transformation rather than economic transactions. Because most of the investment opportunities we've been having across most of the African countries, they are merely transactional, not talking about transformative investment. And we're talking about the kind of investment that considers, in Zimbabwe, about 63% of people below under the age of 25, of the population are people below under the age of 45. What kind of investment will be able to take them into consideration? Second, we have almost about 2/3 of the population that are living in rural areas. Most of our investment opportunities have been focusing on urban centers. How do we think about the kind of investment that will be able to bring all of them on board? Also, we're talking about the kind of investment that will reverse the endemicity of informality, where about 80% of employment are in the informal sector. We want to reverse it so that about 80% go to formal investment that will be able to push the kind of labor into the productive sector and formal sector, so that what we have in the informal sector is far below 20%. So that's the kind of thing the kind of investment we're trying to push for. We're also trying to really push for investment that will help us to address the binding constraints on growth and development. We all know that one of the major binding constraints on industrialization in Zimbabwe is the issue of energy. And the World Bank has told us that because of energy outages, we are losing almost about 6.1% of our GDP every year. So we're looking for investment that will be able to really look at that and how we make it really, really possible. And also, we are moving on the basis of what the country has achieved so far. And I want to also acknowledge the kind of resilience of the economy of Zimbabwe. Is one of the very few countries in the world that still stand on its 2 feet after 25 years of economic sanctions. It has built a kind of resilience that we have even moved to the level of stabilization. The Ministry of Finance, the Reserve Bank will tell you now we're experiencing single-digit inflation. And you know the time when all of us were billionaires. Huh? You know the time you hold one note like this, you're a billionaire. Now that period is over. We're at the period of stabilization. Single-digit inflation, and even the growth trajectory is extremely very positive. It's been projected to grow for about 5% this year. Now we want to move from stabilization to long-term development trajectory. So that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of investment we are looking for. And that's why we thought this one is really very important for us to really, really achieve the long-term development trajectory, the kind of investment that will push for that. Now, in this regard, what is the role of UNDP? UNDP, working with ZIDA, ZIDA is to serve as a bridge, as a connector, as a facilitator, so that we'll be able to mobilize not only, we're not talking about finance, but investment opportunities that will be able to achieve the 3 principles and the attributes of what they call sustainable businesses. A business that will be able to promote what we call financial profit. That is the first bottom line. The second bottom line, as it relates to the Sustainable Development Goal, is social profit. And the third one is environmental profit. So we are looking for kind of business that will be able to maintain balance of the triple bottom lines, not only profit alone, but be able to ensure that the society in which they operate also benefit from their economic profit. And also their activities do not impinge on the planet. So those are the kind of things, the kind of investment that we're trying to do as the SDG integrator, the role that the General Assembly gave to UNDP in 2016. Now, how can Zimbabwe benefit from the global impact investment assets? As of last year, it is very clear that we are all sitting, the world is sitting on $1.6 trillion asset on the impact investment map, controlled by 3,907 institutions. But the good news is that about 53% of these over 3,000 institutions said they are interested in investing or allocating their asset to sub-Saharan Africa. So I think this is a good golden opportunity for us to leverage as those of us that are here in Zimbabwe. But the reality is very clear. investment flows to where economies have clear, credible, and predictable policies and business environments. That is the primary conditions. And we need to really see, how do we take advantage of this as a country? And that is why UNDP is partnering with ZEDA to ensure that we achieve these requirements by making sure we focus on building confidence and trust before we start mobilizing capital. Because the capital will not stay if the confidence and trust is not only in the financial system, but across the various sectors. The second one is for us to focus in building ecosystem before we really scale up the capital enhancement or investment opportunities in the country. We need to really make sure all the stakeholders are really brought to the table, where we have a common understanding of the type of investment we require to achieve the Agenda 2030 through the instrumentality of National Development Strategy number 2. And I think this is one thing that is really very important for us. And that is why we thought it is also very important as the third element for the country to develop the market intelligence that will be able to identify investment opportunity areas. One of the things we focus more attention on is to identify critical sectors that are considered to be impact investment sector. These are the sectors that are not only galvanizing the flow of capital, but also achieving social and economic as well as environmental impact on the ground at the community level. This is the kind of things we thought we need to really look at. And the beauty of this is that we need to really focus on how we invest on de-risking. The risking facility is really key for us to really push this initiative forward. And in this regard, we thought there is need for us to look at the form of guarantees that will be able to push the process of investment that we need in the country. What are the blended finance opportunities that are required? This, again, is another thing we need to really put in place. And this reminds me of what happened about 2 weeks ago when one of the permanent secretaries that are here, Engineer Muguchi, was saying that it is high time we developed a kind of code of conduct for all tiers of government and even NGOs that collect grants from international development partners. And we tell them this grant is not free. You must be able to apply the principle of payback period, where you'll be able to discipline yourself to say, hey, what I'm getting, I must be able to recover this within the next 2-3 years. So that's the kind of thing we are talking about. And also, we need to really build strong institutions. You cannot de-risk the environment if the institutions are not strong, if the rules are not clear, and if the engagement facilities are not predictable. We need to have structured platform for this, and this is really very important for us. And in terms of this, I know there are so many types of capital that is required. And the issue here is we need to think about capital investment in a different way. The investment we are looking for is not a popularity context, and it's not a charity. Like I said, capital only flows to where there's clarity, where there's credibility, where there is predictability, and when there is strong partnership. In this regard, all efforts to ensure that the current area clearance process, dialogue process, is maintained is very important for us to really mobilize investment across all tiers of government. And also, the SDG Impact Investment Map must be able to identify investment constraints, and our willingness to address them collectively is very important. We need to really make sure we look at the domestic institutions and how they can support opportunities that are around each of the sectors we want to focus attention on. It is also important that we ensure that these investment opportunity areas are well targeted and well coordinated. We need to do this so that it helps us to really achieve the kind of goals we have anticipated to achieve within a very short period of time, particularly within the instrument of NDS2. The call to actions, and in conclusion, is that the task ahead is very clear. We need to move away from investment dialogue to investment architecture. This is really very important. We need to stop talking, and we need to start acting. And also, we need to move from investment architecture to investment pipelines. We need to develop a series of investment opportunities and how we move them, translate them from the current potential to real investment action. So those are the kind of things we need to do. And also, we need to really make sure pipelines lead to capital mobilization, and the capital mobilization lead to development impacts on the ground. We need your thoughts, your perspectives, experience to make this Zimbabwe impact investment map not only a success, but something that can help us to really accelerate growth and development under the NDS2. And I want to say, your being here is a valuable asset to us, and we really, really appreciate your presence. So we really want your reflections and perspectives on how to shape impact investment in Zimbabwe and make it something that will not only drive the investment opportunities at the subnational level, but also at the national level and across the various sectors. So once again, thank you for the opportunity for us to have you here. It's really a great pleasure for UNDP to have all of you here today. Thank you.
Please, a big round of applause for the resident representative of UNDP, Dr. Ayodele Odusola. Thank you so much for those remarks. So just to reiterate what he said, $1.6 trillion worth of assets looking at impact capital investment, 3,900 institutions, but 60% are willing to look at sub-Saharan Africa to start deploying some of that impact capital. But investment flows, they flourish and really come to those countries with clear, predictable policies and investment environments. And of course, just to reinforce that our conversation, we do a lot of investment promotion, and that is great, and we must continue doing that. However, we now look more increasingly have to look at ecosystem building, because SDG capital requires confidence, evidence, coordination, and credible pathways. Those, of course, just to reiterate, those of you who are, if you'd like to watch us, we're live streaming on the UNDP Facebook page. Please go to UNDP Twitter account. You'll find the link. Please join us. And if you have any comments, of course, put them in the Facebook page and so forth, and I'm sure someone may get back to you with some of the responses. But please, welcome to our Zimbabwe Impact Investment Dialogue under the theme Building Zimbabwe's Impact Investment Ecosystem, Mobilizing Private Capital Towards Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. We, of course, are here on the fringes of ZITF 2026, and where are we? We are in one of the most beautiful cities, I believe, not just in Zimbabwe and Southern Africa, but one of the most beautiful cities to me in the world. Of course, that is Bulawayo. And of course, we are being hosted here by the city and the city fathers, represented by our next speaker. So please join me in giving a large welcome, a big welcome to the Mayor of Bulawayo, His Worship, Senator David Coulthard.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome you to our great city. I know that we're running behind schedule, so I'm going to keep my remarks short and hopefully pithy. What is the most important thing in the real estate world? Isn't it the one word? It's position. Position, position, location, location, location. And I believe that that is our city's greatest asset. It's no coincidence that when you go through the center of our city, you'll see a tall building, and that is the headquarters of the railways, the National Railways of Zimbabwe, which is running below capacity at present, but it is a constant reminder to us of the location, the position of the city. located strategically with railway lines that go to the DRC, to Zambia, to Botswana, potentially, if the Walvis Bay line becomes a reality, to Namibia, to Mozambique, and it's our greatest asset. But of course, we have a lot more in this city. It is, as you've said correctly, it's a very beautiful city. We have very low crime rates in the city. We have great schools, good hospitals. You can drink the water out of our taps. We deliver water, not every day, but we deliver water to 94% of households in the city. It is also a city with remarkable infrastructure. Sadly, much of it running way below capacity, large industrial sites with railway sidings to them, but they are there. And we're ready for investment. It is also a city with a great history. Deep-rooted culture going back to King Mzilikazi in 1840, amazing artists, a vibrant city with the glorious Metopus just 30 minutes away, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this is a city which is open for investment, and we welcome investment, and under our administration at the Bulawayo City Council, we are trying to open up doors and facilitate investment into our city. But I want to come back to a key point in closing that our introductory speaker said, and that is about the notion of predictability. And a key aspect to predictability is respect for the rule of law and a determination to tackle corruption and malpractice within administration. And I'm using this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to advise you that in our full council meeting held at the beginning of April, our council passed a new resolution adopting a new code of ethics for our city council. We believe it's the first in the country, and we're going beyond that. We will be educating our councillors and our management on it. But the essence of this is a realization, the understanding of what you said, sir, that investors gravitate to where there's predictability. Investors gravitate to centers, to countries, to cities where they feel that their investment will be safe. And whilst, of course, we operate in the broader environment of Africa as a continent and of Zimbabwe as a nation, we recognize the need to put our own house in order if we are going to attract investment. So with those words, I look forward to hearing the rest of the deliberations. I trust that you have a wonderful few days in our great city. If you've got time, please take time to go and see our Natural History Museum. It is magnificent. Go and see hillside dams, which are full. They've spilled this year because of the beautiful rains. And if you can get out to the Metopus, I guarantee you will be enthralled. But all the very best for your deliberations. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Please, a big round of applause. His Worship, the Mayor of Bulawayo, Senator David Coulthard. Thank you so much for that. Well, definitely Bulawayo is open for business, just like Zimbabwe is open for business. And yes, please, I'm sure many of you have been to Bulawayo before, but those who haven't, please take the Mayor's word and go and visit those sites. But I think I'd like to emphasize the point he makes that investment is welcome in Bulawayo City. They're trying to put together the environment as council to make sure investment flourishes here. And of course, we do have the investment opportunities for whoever, whether it be domestic or international. The businesses are there, the investment opportunities are there, and it's full speed ahead as far as I'm concerned with Zimbabwe. However, we do have to focus on some issues, and one of them, like we're discussing today, is the ecosystem. I think that's key. Promotion is great, we can promote all we like, but without that ecosystem around it, without everyone working together, all the stakeholders required working together, building the confidence, we are not going to attract impact capital. So this is why we're here, to start this conversation and move us forward. Without further ado, our next speaker to give us a goodwill message. He is the Permanent Secretary, Presidential Affairs and Devolution in the Office of the President. Please, a big round of applause, Engineer Tafadzwa Muguti. Welcome, Pierce.
Thank you very much, Andy. A very good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
I would like to first recognize the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Skills Audit and Development, Ambassador Doshitiga. I would like to also recognize my older brother, Dr. Innocent Mashe, the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and a round of applause for you for the work you've been doing with the ZIG of late, going around the country. We know it's a tall order, but we know you can do it. Dr. Ayodele Odesula, the representative, and together with the Deputy Representative, Mr. Chala Getachew. I would also just want to recognize a good friend, His Worship the Mayor, Senator David Coltert. Thank you very much for the hospitality. And I always love coming to Bulawayo because it's clean, and it's something that I associate myself with. Professor Ashok Chakravarti, our Chief Economic Advisor to Treasury, and of course, Mrs. Silibasiso Chizwina, the Chief Investment Promotion Officer. Captains of industry who are here, political, diplomatic party leaderships, government officials, media fraternity, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be brief, but just to say, first and foremost, we are marking 45 years of collaboration, partnership, and achieving greatness together between the government of Zimbabwe and the United Nations. And last year, we got an opportunity for His Excellency to have a good hour with Dr. Ayo at State House, just deliberating on the achievements, and myself on what UNDP has done. And we found out that they were not blowing their whistle enough, because most of the things that they've done for this country, they've done more UNDP in Zimbabwe than they've done anywhere on the African continent in the last 5 years. A round of applause to the UNDP for that. So Zimbabwe is topping in the world right now with the Solar for Health. Actually, we now have other countries, even from outside Africa, coming to learn from UNDP in Zimbabwe how they're doing some of their projects. So it helps when you get a man who has worked in New York to come and run with the Africa agenda, working with global standards. Ladies and gentlemen, my solidarity message is a call to action. Firstly, we have this big elephant in the room within Zimbabwe, the $4.5 billion US of imports that we have as a country. We need to fix it. If socioeconomic development is done without making sure that we align with our sustainable development goals and making sure that we have import substitution, then we have no industry to talk about. We can't as a country be achieving success in exports, but also topping imports. There's a correlation there, but at the same time, it does not make sense. It's like a GDP which increases and poverty also increases. It doesn't work, and I think Professor Chakravarti will agree with me that it's not making sense. So some of the decisions that we have to make as government, and I'll speak on behalf of the Office of the President, is that we need to make sure that we drive the agenda of sustainable development. And this can only be achieved if we follow the Constitution in terms of Chapter 14 of devolution. Our forefathers in 1984 came up with the 13 principles of decentralization. And these 13 principles gave way to what we call today rural district councils. And these 13 principles were very clear that we have to provide a unique bottom-up approach to solving the problems of Zimbabwe. So this is a call to action, and I'm glad that together working with the UNDP, His Excellency has challenged the UNDP to say drive the devolution agenda, working with the Office of the President Cabinet. And so as it is, I've just come out of a morning brief with my dear colleague, Senator David Coltert, His Worship, and where we're talking about the principles of how we need to get down to saying development starts at grassroots. Professor Chakravarti, if we can tell that we have got $49 billion GDP in Zimbabwe, but we can't tell what is the GDP of Bulawayo, then we're not doing it correctly. We need to start from the bottom up. Our forefathers after the war created what we called village development committees. In Shona translation, VIDCO. Yeah, that's what they were called. And I remember my grandfather taking me to some of these meetings, and all these elders would sit, and the headmen would sit and chair the meeting, and they would discuss about the development agenda. It covered even food security. And they would say, this year, who's got the largest field? who's got income, and they would all agree that they would brew beer, and hundreds of them would flock to the Muguti household and help each other grow this maize. And when it was done, they would pay each other with buckets of maize, clothing, whatever they had. That was development at the grassroots. So, as Zimbabwe, we need to transition from seeing the United Nations Development Program and the entire UN as a free basket case. We need to transition from aid to investment. But we will not be able to transition from aid to investment if we can't measure the impact of the investment which is coming in. So we need to know the color of the money we want. We have to be precise. What good is having an investor to come and open a barber shop or come and have bottled water? The color of the money has to speak our agenda. And our agenda is that we're a country in 25 years of economic sanctions, political sanctions, and we are now resilient to those sanctions, and we're now witnessing that our resilience is shown through the single-digit inflation. And that consistency has not been through IMF, has not been through the World Bank, it's been through the people of Zimbabwe, working together. So we need to then say, as we're working together, what is the color of the money that we want? And the color of the money is simplified to simply say, what kind of investment do we need, and in which sector do we need it, so that we can aim for our sustainable development goals. Ladies and gentlemen, we just recently celebrated independence. And I would like to ask everyone in the room that if we're a country that is now promoting our people to wear second-hand underwear, second-hand socks, second-hand clothing, are we free? We're not. We need to free ourselves from inconsistency. If we speak about economic development, industrialization, fiscal stability, then there needs to be predictability in what comes out of our mouths, all of us. We can't flip-flop with policies. We have to be consistent. And so the agenda of fiscal equalization comes to light. Fiscal equalization, to those of you who don't know it, in my own words, as a self-proclaimed professor of devolution, is basically our capacity to be able to reward communities in terms of equity in their own endowments. That's fiscal equalization. So if we have oil in Mzarabani and government is partnering with Invictus, good for central government, but what do the people of Mzarabani get? Do they get 10% shares? Do they get 5% shares? That is a discussion we need to have, because that will limit dependence on national treasury, Dr. Ayo. We need to have the fiscal equalization discussion, Treasury, Reserve Bank. Because whilst all monies run to Harare, what are we leaving behind? What are we leaving in Mapisa? That when it comes to independence, we're now jostling around for money to go and promote that road. Yet Matopos is generating its own money through tourism. We need to start having the agenda of a reconfigured state, according to His Excellency, in his own statement on the 30th of August 2020, when he launched the devolution decentralization policy. The OPC will continue to lead the devolution agenda, and we've changed our tactics because now we're going bottom up, because when we started from the top, most of us did not want to let go of our power. We still want to parachute into villages, V8 engines all the way from Harare to come and launch a $20,000 borehole. It's not going to happen again. We need to have sustainable development, we need to have sustainable policies, and we need to be able to do everything for the people and nothing else for us. So, in conclusion, the UNDP, we ask you to continue having tangible results. These are one of the few development partnerships that we've witnessed tangible results. Right now, I can tell you how much impact your solar systems are having on our grid. Just 2 years ago, you surpassed the double digit of solar panels that have been installed. We surpassed that. That now means we're heading towards 30 or 40 or 50 megawatts that will be pumped onto the grid by UNDP alone. Wow. The last time I checked, UNDP joined the race for village business units late. But right now, UNDP is leading in terms of village business units. They're doing quite well across all the provinces. But you see, Dr. Ayo, if we implement the village business units as a social grant, we are encouraging poverty. Let's make sure we change our model. Every village business unit should be aligned to an economic factor, and the factor is there should be uptake in Zimbabwe. Forget exports if we can't meet local demand. Currently, we've got soybeans. When we licensed Zimgold and Surface to have oil refineries for cooking oil in this country, they promised us sustainability to our people. They promised us jobs. And when we started off, we had hundreds of people who were growing soybean. You'd go into Lighton Road, you'd go into Tunguza Industrial Road, and you'd see trucks and trucks of soybeans grown by Zimbabweans, which were being delivered, and we're getting some of the most healthiest cooking oil on this continent. To date, they are now importing crude. They bring in crude, they dilute it in our own country. And now we are importing $200 million of soybean. And that soybean was supposed to go to our people. So ladies and gentlemen, there are millions, 17 million Zimbabweans who are hoping, and people, some of you in this room, most of you, to make the right decisions. They are not there at the tables when we give special SIs to the already rich people. They're not there when we debate among ourselves which water project we should start first. They're not there. But they look forward to the hills that hope is coming. And that's what we want to do. Ladies and gentlemen, let's ensure that we embrace as government a whole of government and society approach, leaving no one and no place behind. Let's ensure that when we speak as the people of Zimbabwe, let's be like the Malaysians. From the rice fields to the castle, they spoke with one voice. 1991, most of you don't know it, but we were at par, our economy with China. Some of you don't know it, some of you were not born. That in 1990, you needed $3 to buy a Zimbabwean dollar. Some of you don't know it. If we could do it then, why can't we do it now? And every country should be able to build its own future on its own terms, with its own resources. So ladies and gentlemen, as we celebrate 45 years of working together with the UNDP and as the government of Zimbabwe, I challenge all of us to have big, scary, and audacious dreams. Let's dream big. Let's not score big points for ourselves when we've done micro things to this economy. Zimbabwe can still have the best rail network on the continent. We can still be the gateway to the rest of Africa. But it starts with us dreaming big and aligning this with our SDGs. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you well, and I'd like to once again congratulate the UNDP. And best discussions for today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Engineer Tafadzwa Muguti, Permanent Secretary, Presidential Affairs and Devolution in the Office of the President. So, government is a call for action. You know, it's fascinating about this question of imports, and I think let's stick to Bulawayo. I don't know how old we all were, but some of us used to buy tires from a company called Dunlop. Now, I'm not sure any of you remember Dunlop because it used to be just a couple of kilometers down the road, and it's now closed. But did you know that we import $260 million worth of tires every year? Okay. Yet to set up a tire factory will probably cost us between 50 and 80 million US. But we're importing 260 a year. Million. Think about that. We're importing $900 million worth of cars a year. Why? Because we like Prados and Isuzus. Yeah? I don't know if any of you have been to India and China. They started off with Tata. You know these things where you wouldn't even drive one now, but that's how they started. Now look at where Tata is and the kind of cars they're giving us. Sometimes Prados and Isuzus and so forth that we don't make actually hurt us, even though we like them. I won't talk about the parking lot outside, right? But anyway, enjoy your cars. But anyway, I think the message is given. Ladies and gentlemen, now we've heard from the Bulawayo City, the mayor. We've heard, of course, from the government, the office of the president. Business, it's necessary to hear from business. So just some very, very quick remarks. Please put your hands together. I hope she's here. Deputy President, Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Josephine Takundwa. Josephine? Come on, you can do better than that. It's a long walk. It's a long walk.
You know, coming to the podium after such a powerful and charismatic delivery makes my job this morning a little difficult. But all the same, please do allow me to write on all the protocol observed by the Master of Ceremonies, as well as by all the distinguished speakers who spoke before me. It is an honor. Let me say, Andy has given me 5 minutes, so I'll be very quick in my delivery. It is an honor to deliver this goodwill message on behalf of the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce at this timely and strategic dialogue. Let me begin by acknowledging the strong and growing partnership between the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce and the UNDP and the wider UN community. Our collaboration through such platforms as the Connect Africa Symposium reflects a shared commitment to advancing private sector development, regional integration, and sustainable financing solutions. The UNDP has been a key partner in supporting dialogue research capacity building initiatives that strengthen the role of business in national development. Zimbabwe's development agenda is clearly articulated in the National Development Strategy too, and the strategy places greater emphasis on industrialization, value addition, infrastructure development, and inclusive growth. These priorities closely align with the Sustainable Development Goals. However, delivery remains constrained by a limited fiscal space and restricted access to affordable long-term financing. In this context, impact investment presents a practical pathway to bridge the financing gap. It allows us to move forward, to move beyond traditional models of development finance by crowding in private capital towards sectors that generate both financial returns as well as social value for Zimbabwe. For Zimbabwe, it's not an abstract concept. It's directly relevant to sectors such as agriculture, renewable energy, climate resilience, housing, and SME development. However, unlocking this capital requires deliberate action. First, macroeconomic stability remains the foundation. Investors require confidence, as alluded to earlier, in the policy environment, currency stability, and the ability to preserve value over time. Progress in these areas will directly influence the scale as well as the quality of the investment flows. Domestic resource mobilization must also take center stage. Zimbabwe has pools of capital within pension funds, insurance institutions, and the banking sector. The challenge is to create instruments and frameworks that channel this capital into productive SDG-aligned investments, while at the same time managing risk appropriately. SDG number 17 is critical. Indeed, no single institution can drive this agenda alone. Government, development partners, and the private sector must work together to de-risk investments, co-create solutions, and align incentives. From the perspective of the private sector, there is a readiness to receive investment, innovate, and expand. What we need is an enabling environment that supports long-term planning and reduces uncertainty. As the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, we remain committed to advancing policy dialogue, representing business interests, and facilitating investment linkages that contribute to national development goals. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to commend the UNDP Zimbabwe, a friend and partner to the ZNCC, through many development initiatives. Would also like to commend ZIDA and all the partners for convening this important engagement. It's through such collaborative efforts that we can accelerate progress towards the SDG goals and lay a stronger foundation for this phase of Zimbabwe's development under NDS2. With these remarks, which I hope were few, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
They were few but very effective. Please, a big round of applause, Josephine Takundwa, Deputy President, Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce. We're talking here about building an ecosystem, ladies and gentlemen, but we're also talking about domestic requirements, and also, of course, let's not forget about the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which will allow us to build in Zimbabwe, will export into the continent, into SADC and Sub-Saharan Africa. It's really important to always put that at the top of your mind when you talk about investment, particularly those who are coming from outside Zimbabwe into Zimbabwe. It's not just domestic capacity that you're looking at. It's also the ability for Zimbabwe to springboard your investment into Sub-Saharan Africa and into Africa itself underneath that agreement. I think it's a very critical investment point that we should be telling investors about, on top of course, building up our investment ecosystem. Now, without further ado, we come to our guest of honor keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming, big round of applause, to the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Dr. Innocent Mase. Welcome, DJ. Welcome. It's good to see you. Yep.
Let me just check. Well, it's good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for inviting the Reserve Bank to be here. It is always a pleasure to be here, talking to partners in Zimbabwe's economic development journey. Let me first of all recognize all the dignitaries in the room and ride on the protocols already observed, but I can't miss to recognize our own mayor. We are in your territory, and thank you for the work that you are doing. To my brothers who are fellow workers in very difficult circumstances, thank you very much for being here. Zimbabwe stands at a critical moment in its development journey. As we pursue Vision 2030 and seek to attain upper middle class status, one reality is very clear. Public resources alone will not be sufficient to finance the scale of transformation that is required. We therefore need strong partnerships between the public sector, the private capital markets, and development finance institutions and entrepreneurs. That the theme of today's event is impact investment is, I think, very appropriate at this point in time. We are not here simply to attract any capital. We are here to attract the right kind of capital. Patient, purposeful, aligned with Zimbabwe's development priorities, and that achieves development impacts. On behalf of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe and the government of Zimbabwe, I want to affirm our strong interest in the work that ZIDA, with the support of UNDP, and in partnership with Cross Boundary, are doing through the SDG Impact Investment Initiative. The Reserve Bank has a direct stake in the success of this agenda. From the perspective of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, impact investment is highly relevant because it sits at the intersection of three priorities: financial sector deepening, i.e., broadening the range of instruments, investors, and financing solutions available in our market; productive investment, direct capital towards sectors that generate jobs, exports, productivity, and resilience. I didn't say employment, deliberately. Third, macroeconomic stability and confidence, creating credible investment channels that support sustainable growth. Capital that targets both financial returns and measurable development outcomes can help strengthen sectors such as renewable energy, agriculture, infrastructure, SMEs development, housing, climate resilience, and so on. So, financial stability, therefore, is the foundation. No investor, impact-oriented or otherwise, will commit long-term capital into an economy where the value of that capital is uncertain. the introduction of the Zimbabwe gold currency represents a structural commitment to anchoring monetary policy in a way that deepens stability and predictability in our economy. So the financial sector must be a conduit, not a barrier. For impact investment to scale, Zimbabwe's domestic financial institutions, commercial banks, pension funds, insurance companies, development finance institutions, and others must themselves be capable of structuring, pricing, and intermediating impact-aligned instruments. Without that, it's almost impossible to talk about impact investment. So the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe has a role to play here through our regulatory and supervisory frameworks. We are actively examining how prudential regulations can accommodate blended finance structures, patient capital, and instruments like green bonds and social impact bonds without compromising financial system integrity. This is key. Part of the reason why the Reserve Bank is a key member of the Network for Greening Financial Investments is exactly this. We recognize that some of the risk weighting and collateral requirements in our current framework may inadvertently discourage investment in sectors such as agriculture and renewable energy, where impact capital is most needed and most appropriate. Therefore, special projects and activities need to be framed around these areas, including, of course, climate adaptation, MSME financing, where impact capital is needed and, again, most appropriate. Currency and capital account considerations are important. International impact investors need confidence that they can deploy capital, receive returns in convertible currency, and repatriate proceeds in a predictable manner. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe takes these concerns seriously. In the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, we have had a capital in, capital out principle. So investors need to sleep easy. The key here is when you want to invest in this country, you have to register your investment. We have seen companies contracting loans and then come to the Reserve Bank. By that time, it's too late. You will come to the Reserve Bank and will tell you, look, you want predictability, and this is what you settled us with? No. And then we will consider the investment climate not friendly. But let me put it very clearly. Zimbabwe has no foreign currency problem. Zero. We have had a capital account surplus, a trade surplus for quite some time now. Our balance of payment position is very good, very, very good. So we should not be having any exchange rate issues. In fact, it should be the other side. We should be scratching our heads about how we weaken, our currency instead of how we strengthen it. I want to be direct with this audience. We know that exchange rate uncertainty and capital account restrictions have historically been among the most cited barriers to foreign investment in Zimbabwe. These concerns, though legitimate, I can tell you we are working systematically and deliberately to address them in terms of the information we give and in terms of substance. Therefore, I can tell you for sure, progress on these fronts has not only been a technical exercise, it has actually resulted in real results. I keep saying, if you snooze, you lose. This is the time to invest in this country. So, how do we build a financial sector infrastructure for impact? Impact investment does not happen in a vacuum. It requires a financial ecosystem that can identify, structure, and price development-aligned transactions. That ecosystem, credit bureau, valuation frameworks, impact measurement standards, green taxonomy, blended finance, is what is needed for us to build together. Zimbabwe's financial institutions have a major role to play in building an impact investment ecosystem. Banks, pension funds, as has been mentioned, asset managers, and capital market institutions are custodians of our domestic savings. With the right policy environment and instruments, those savings can be mobilized more effectively and efficiently towards productive long-term investment. This requires, though, innovative financing structures, blended finance mechanisms, credit and investment tools, stronger project preparation pipelines, and the ability to improve risk-sharing arrangements. Greater transparency and measurable impact reporting will also be key. The Reserve Bank supports efforts that strengthen financial intermediation and channel capital into real economic growth. Let me, Andy, how much time do I have? 5? No, well, 10, okay, great. I wanted to address the pension fund and insurance sector issue. It was not supposed to be part of my, my speech, so that's why I was asking for a minute or two. Zimbabwe's pension and insurance funds represent a significant pool of long-term capital. The Reserve Bank and IPAC are jointly reviewing investment guidelines to create greater space for SDG-aligned infrastructure and private equity investments by these financial institutional investors. Mobilizing even a modest fraction of domestic pension assets towards impact investment will be transformative for Zimbabwe. And it will reduce Zimbabwe's dependence on external capital flows, which are always subject to global risk appetite and geopolitical conditions. I keep telling audiences that there is a huge risk premium that is built on financing that we get from abroad. It might be because of lack of information and lack of confidence that has been mentioned. But I would like to assure you that no investor or no creditor to the private sector has failed to remit their dividends, their disinvestments, their profits from this economy. So I want to be clear. We have definitely legacy issues, but I can tell you those are issues that the debt sustainability framework is working on. But I can tell you since 2019, no debt has been left unpaid when it came due, obviously. Now, direct message to investors in the room. I know what your concerns are. You are asking, is the policy environment stable? Can capital be brought in and returns repatriated efficiently? Are investments protected under the rule of law? Are they bankable opportunities in the pipeline? These are valid and important questions. What I can assure you is that Zimbabwe is actively addressing all of them through ongoing reforms aimed at strengthening policy consistency. I say policy consistency, not just policy, Because in some areas we have had policy, but we haven't been very strong in being consistent. Improving the investment climate, deepening financial sector confidence, and creating a more predictable environment for sustainable investment. This is where I say, no country can develop using another country's currency. The Reserve Bank launched, through collaborative efforts with the Ministry of Finance and government as a whole, the new ZiG banknotes. I want to emphasize, this is not a new currency. So I want the economy to understand that we are not back in those legacy years where we are chopping and changing. We are not. The old ZiG banknotes from 2024 are still the same ZiG banknotes. What we've changed is the form of the banknote itself. How many are in this room who have ever seen a ZiG banknote? Not on posters. All right, who has ever touched it? I was going to be very unhappy if PSU hadn't. But I want to assure you that this currency is fully backed. In fact, it is fully backed that it is actually undervalued. So don't worry about that. Okay. But the second thing that I have pointed out is that this country has enough foreign currency generating capacity. Yeah. But I want to also emphasize that for the Reserve Bank, we understand that because of legacy issues, there will be doubting Thomases, and there will be those who were practically affected by what happened in the past. But I want to assure you that is in the past. So the SDG impact investment work led by ZIDA, with support from UNDP and cross-boundary, are developing this. This is an important aspect or an important transition to an important part of the development story for this country. It will give you structured evidence-based analysis of where the opportunities are, what the risks look like, and what reforms are needed to make these opportunities investable. We are inviting you into a process, not just a pitch. Today's dialogue and the consultation process that follows is designed to make sure that the investment ecosystem we build is one that actually works for you as an investor, not just for Zimbabwe as a country. Zimbabwe's 2030 vision is an ambitious target to be met, and it will be met. Because of that, I want to also assure you that the local currency journey we have embarked on is not reversible. The sooner we start building consensus around it, the better. And the commitment to leave no one and no place behind requires not just better policies. It requires a step change in the scalable and quality of investments flowing to this economy. Impact investment, capital that works not just for returns, but for people, for climate, for jobs, for food security, is exactly the kind of investment that can help us get there faster, more equitably, and more sustainably. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe is committed to being a constructive, forward-looking partner in building the financial conditions that make this vision achievable. We will work with UNDP, with ZIDA, with the private sector, and with you all to put in place the monetary, regulatory, and financial system foundations that impact investment requires. Zimbabwe has always had the fundamentals, the natural resources, the human capital, geographic position, and the political will to unlock them responsibly. What we are building now is the financial architecture to match. I wish to conclude by thanking ZIDA UNDP and others, as well as other key stakeholders, for availing themselves in participating in this dialogue. I look forward to the discussions that follow, and don't ask me when monocurrency is coming. But I want to encourage you all to engage effectively and actively in the discussions and the process that we are embarking on. Your voice in shaping Zimbabwe's investment ecosystem matters. Let me end by reassuring you again the Reserve Bank's commitment to supporting this initiative. But before I sit down, I want to tell you that in the last 3 months, Zimbabwe gold has gained 2.5% in value. So those who still look forward to a green currency, I want to assure you, one day we'll be in monocurrency. Not soon, but one day. But I also want to assure you that the holders of foreign currency accounts will keep those accounts. No one is going to force anyone to change their foreign currency into local currency. What will happen is you won't be able to go to the supermarket and use your US dollars to procure anything. So don't worry if you have a foreign loan and it's registered. So these are the two most important points. If you have contracted a foreign loan, it's registered post whatever date we transition to monocurrency. Those contracts, those obligations will be honored in the currency of the contract. So no scaremongering.
movement towards now Zimbabwean gold in some point in the future. Obviously, having nowadays a very dollarized economy, it's actually an advantage when it comes to engaging also with potential international investors. But obviously, all the caveats that you made about how this might be implemented, I'm sure also is going to reassure those potential international investors. And so, building on that, all of those trends that we have mentioned point on the right direction. I would mention as well that, and we have seen that by engaging, by interviewing quite a long number of international investors, is that oftentimes the reputation of Zimbabwe it's still affected by the developments of the last 20 years. And so obviously there is a lot of work to be done in terms of communication, in terms of confirming that all those achievements over the last 2 years are to be maintained. But if I need to give you also a bit of my personal perspective, as I mentioned before, I've been working in countries like the ones I said before, Ethiopia, DRC, Mali, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea, and so forth. All of those countries are much more challenging, I would say, than Zimbabwe. They have, I think, a less developed ecosystem of companies, of financial institutions, and so forth. And nevertheless, all of them have managed in the last 7 years, in the last 20 years, to attract much more DFI investments, much more impact investments, both on an both on an absolute value, but also on a relative value when you account per population or per GDP, which means obviously that the potential for Zimbabwe, once those reforms are consolidated, it's extremely high. I mentioned the issue of debt arrears because I think it's really important in terms of signaling. If the likes of the World Bank, of the African Development Bank were to restart working with the government, obviously that would have a significant bandwagon effect in mobilizing additional investments from DFIs into the private sector, on impact investors and the broader investment community. So I think really reaching an agreement there would be probably quite transformative. But beyond that, we have been looking at the ecosystem. As I mentioned before briefly, I think it's really extremely developed compared to many other African countries. In terms of already existing private equity funds or impact funds already operating here, the ones of Takura Capital, even in a difficult environment, they managed not so many years ago to raise capital from BII, All Mutual, working with the United Nations, actually in setting up an impact fund on the energy sector. The association environment, with plenty of business associations which can really play a significant role connecting international investors to their member companies. Also, we have been engaging with the likes of CCI, with the Association of Horticultural Exporters, energy investors, and so forth. So really significant ecosystem there. Obviously, the banking sector relatively developed and strong. Should I try to put some of those slides, run into that? Yeah. This is the graph I was mentioning before. I think it's interesting just to flag it. So this is Zimbabwe. The size of these bubbles actually is the absolute investment from DFIs. And the two axes basically are to account for GDP and for population. And this is a logarithmic scale. So typically, if you are here, actually, you are going to receive, if you are here, you are going to be receiving 10 times less investments than you are here by unit of GDP, and same here by unit of population. So you can see here some the largest countries in terms of investments are Nigeria, South Africa, across the border almost, Kenya, very significant destination of DFI investors. Here you can see countries like Ethiopia, DRC, still significantly large bubbles, and this one is Zimbabwe. So as mentioned, small bubble means small in absolute terms, and in this quadrant actually means underserved, both if you account by GDP and by population. And yeah, going back to what I was saying, so basically, oops, sorry for that. Yeah, I was talking basically about really develop ecosystem of players with some actually well-established banks. Some of them actually already quite active in what we call sustainable or impact-oriented sectors like energy access of agriculture and so forth. Maybe sometimes some challenges related to beneficial ownership and so forth, which is really something really critical for DFIs. And then obviously something that it's rare in many other African countries, it's actually a developed stock exchange. With even obviously the Victoria Falls dollar denominated, and actually with quite a developed practices, very particularly in terms of ESG reporting and so forth, which is actually obviously quite a strength when it comes to promoting opportunities to the international investment community. I'll just skim quickly through some of these because they have been already mentioned. So obviously, and there is going to be, I think, someone elaborating a bit more on the regulatory strengthening of the country. Someone already mentioned on the potential and existing activities already of pension funds, with work ongoing also to make sure that they are legislation and regulations are put in place so that some of their funding actually can also be redirected to other impact sectors, not only towards housing and real estate. And I already mentioned dollarized economy and obviously the appetite for reforms. And I think actually yeah. So we have been engaging, as I mentioned before, with the universe of impact investors through this engagement, but also through multiple other engagements at cross-boundary in the past. This is just to give you a flavor of the range of those, DFIs, private equity funds, debt funds, impact-first investors, which maybe sometimes they invest in organizations like agricultural cooperatives and so forth, and they might even be able to lose some money. And institutional investors, maybe large-scale impact funds, infrastructure funds that could be eventually also looking at opportunities across Africa. As I mentioned before, oftentimes they are not active in Zimbabwe for the reasons we mentioned, but we really believe that there is significant opportunities to keep attracting them. And obviously, the trends have been already positive over recent years. So some DFIs have been investing in Zimbabwe recently. Just two examples, Proparco and BII investing in NMB only two years ago. Again, with the final objective of promoting access to finance for SMEs within the country. IFC actually is closing their first transaction into Zimbabwe in many, many years. And we expect that also is going to open the doors to several other investments into the country, and also basically, as I mentioned before, incentivizing and creating also, making also other DFIs to follow the example of these lead investors. We're basically only halfway through our engagement, and obviously our final report and recommendations actually is going to be quite comprehensive. But here I just wanted to share with you, I think basically some key elements or recommendations that we think are going to be critical to promote and develop the impact investment sector within Zimbabwe and continue to attract foreign investments. The first one I already mentioned, so really concluding those discussions with the international creditors and attracting basically the allies of the World Bank to re-engage with the country is certainly going to have a significant bandwagon effect. Consolidate the progress on economic policies that we were discussing before. I mentioned that there is a very strong ecosystem of impact investors into the country and related players. Nevertheless, we think that one thing that is lagging within the country actually is kind of an impact investment association. So actually bringing those actors together so that they can engage also now with authorities to support the development of the necessary policies and the institutional setting, but also with the international players, act a bit as a facilitator and intermediary, bringing those opportunities to the international investors and so forth. I think that could be actually quite transformative potentially. And there are a number of countries across Africa that have set up those kind of institutions. In Kenya, for instance, in South Africa, in Nigeria, and as I flagged before, those are precisely some of the countries that have managed to attract most impact investments over the recent years. Obviously, there is the need really to promote, to invest actually in promotion, to change the narrative that we were discussing before. Obviously, 20 or plus years of issues and difficulties. Changing that perception doesn't happen overnight. So obviously already ZIDA is involved on that, but also through this engagement and others, we hope actually to be able to assist in start changing a bit that perception. And finally, obviously, one thing that we think might also be transformational, and we have been doing that in several other countries, it's really supporting the matchmaking of those opportunities. So bringing together impact investors, DFIs, and so forth, and local companies to facilitate the identification and the execution of those investment opportunities. And lastly, just to give you a small flavor of what is left for us, actually, when it comes to this engagement, we want to engage with the local ecosystem of players, impact investors, and related organizations, financial institutions, and so forth, local companies as well. So we organized recently actually a workshop at CCI in Harare. We are planning actually to organize an additional workshop with all the relevant players. As I mentioned before, we are also engaging with some international associations of impact investors, and we are hoping to support actually the building of such an association here. So that would be maybe the first stepping stone in order to convene all those partners and parties and to make that happen over the next month or very next years as a first stepping stone. We are also planning to actually building on all the findings of that we have gained over the next months actually. It's sharing us that also with the international investment community. So we are planning to organize a webinar, bringing together probably 30, 40 impact investors. We have done that in the past with several other countries. And we found that to be actually quite impactful and well received by those international investors. Again, it's not going to change the perception overnight, but we think that it's going to help in starting communicating all the achievements that Zimbabwe has managed to execute over the very last few years. And basically we expect also bring that together through possibly also a final validation event with UNDP, ZIDA, and some other players. And voila, so basically that's where we stand. And so thanks everybody for your attention.
Marcos, thank you so much. That's Marcos San Pablo, Managing Director, Cross-Boundary Group. So as you can see, he said that our ecosystem is pretty much better than some African countries. A lot of work to do. There is already impact capital here in Zimbabwe. There's a lot of impact capital we can attract. The debt is an issue. I think I saw a report recently that the Minister of Finance is talking or starting discussions on a 2.5 billion bridging facility to pay the World Bank and the AFDB off. Then we can unlock some funding from them. But that's just initial discussions. But it's very clear that that 21 to 24 billion US dollar debt is something that we have to definitely look at getting down. And of course, ESG reporting is now a fact, particularly if you're a listed company, you have to have ESG reporting. And coming out this year, probably in the next 2 or 3 months, will be will be standards on sustainability reporting. So those of you, those companies in Zimbabwe may have to start looking at sustainability reporting too, on top of ESG reporting. Now, without further ado, we're now coming to our investor dialogue panel. So please join me in welcoming the following panelists. Mr. Clifford Mtameri, Executive Head, Corporate and Institutional Banking, National Building Society. Please, a big round of applause as they come up. Dr. Cornelius Dube, Chief Economist at Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries. Cornelius.
According to the Global Impact Investing Network, GIIN, the global impact investing market is now estimated at $1.571 trillion United States dollars, managed by more
Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Ministry of Finance. Prof, thank you. And of course, we will be joined by P.S. Muguti. Unfortunately, just having a few interviews with ZBC. But so we'll have Clifford, Cornelius, Isabella, Professor Ashok, and P.S. Muguti. Thank you. Guys, a last final round of applause for them. All right, guys, now we did talk about how we had to bring together a cross-section of voices, talk about institutional capital development, finance, commercial banking, industry, and public policy. And I think this discussion moves us from what we've been talking about before this. We've got the emerging insights from the SDG Impact Investment Map. We're now moving discussion from ambition to practical insights, including where the opportunities lie, what constraints remain, and what will it take to unlock more SDG-aligned private capital in Zimbabwe. So, without further ado, I think we'll start with the lady, Isabella. Thank you. It's welcome. It's nice to have you here. Do we have microphones there at the back, please, for the panelists? Thank you. Isabella, we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, so I'm going to give you, each of you, just a few minutes to answer a broad range of questions. I'll ask each of you a question. You'll answer those questions, and then we'll hopefully open up the room to any Q&A questions that you may have, not only for the panelists, but also, of course, for Cross-Boundary MD, to get a bit more feedback from his report there if you need it, which will be shared, by the way, I understand, to everybody. So you will get a copy of that report to be able to look at it at your leisure. Right, so Isabella, let me start with you, Head of Mining, Finance, Bank Group. Of course, I don't have to tell you where EcoBank is. They are really a Pan-African group. And of course, wherever you may be in Africa, I'm sure you can do business with EcoBank. I forget how many countries, but it's most of them, if I'm not mistaken. Isabella, feeding on that, you obviously have local knowledge. You've obviously got Pan-African knowledge, continental lenses on. What makes... We're talking here about confidence, talking here about policies that must be consistent to attract investment. So I suppose the question from your perspective, I'm going to put a couple of questions here. What makes investable, what makes a market investable in reality, like on the ground? What makes it investable? And also looking at the type of products, whether it be capital market products, financial products within the system, what type of products or instruments do you see are missing from Zimbabwe's market that could possibly unlock more investment?
Thank you, Andy. We are in 35 African countries, so that's pretty much the entire continent, Middle Africa mainly. So just to get to the gist of it, beyond the policy messaging, what we've seen working in encouraging investor confidence in a particular market is consistency in policy deliveries to the point of establishing a narrative that you're known for. So if you look at a market like Kenya, they're known for wildlife conservation, being a big sanctuary for wildlife and biodiversity. So if you're looking to attract that kind of impact capital, you're already known for that. So consistency over time should deliver, now when we're talking investor confidence, deliver you to a place where you establish a narrative where you are known for protecting investor capital. And then enforceability of rules, so governance matters. Having governance institutions that then go on to enforce the policies. I like what Zimbabwe has done with the digitization of most of our courts, several of the magistrate courts, so there's transparency, you know the process from end to end. When I have to execute on something, if I have to foreclose, I know, sorry. If I have to make my case or bring a case before the courts, I know it can be executed on time. So governance is super important. It's important at the macro level. It's also important at the micro level. We've seen people bringing transactions, brilliant ideas, but the enterprise itself lacks a structure, lacks governance structures that can help an investor envisage a clear exit plan, a clear financial model. So all that is important, and that's what makes a market attractive.
And of course, it's important for the commercial banks to play a role as an intermediary role. I mean, I think that's something that we may have lost over time. Some of you obviously know I was the group treasurer. I'm a treasurer of some of the major banks, CBZ, and so forth. And the products we had in the capital markets were really, there were a lot of products in those: forwards, derivatives, options. I mean, they were huge. So that's another question for you. Ask you, like, products-wise, what? I mean, I know you have loads of products across the continent.
Yes, we have a whole bouquet of products as commercial banks, most of which have not been accessible to the market, some partially for lack of knowledge, and some to do with the market not being quite ready. One of the key products, you'll be surprised, which people don't use, is the advisory services arms of the banks. What do I mean by that? Banks are bridges, use them. We bridge the perception gap between the external market and what's on the ground. We provide real data to investors. We have capacity to structure transactions so that they are investable and attractive. And as risk managers, so people know banks for being people that take deposits and lend out money. But at the back end is a heavy risk management operating framework. We manage not just our own risks, but the risks of enterprises that we invest in. So parties must have a bank, have a legal advisor before you go out to market to raise money. They'll help you prepare for the part, prepare models that are then attractive and investable. Talking of products, I like what the Deputy Governor spoke to when he mentioned mobilization of domestic savings. Foreign capital is very good, but to a degree it's fickle. In tougher times, it flies away. So you need to build a resilient economy which can mobilize domestic savings that are then, channeled into the private sector. So long-term local currency bonds or long-term US dollar bonds floated on our public markets, VFS or stock exchange, are missing. In our liaison with foreign funders, what we find is that SBLCs issued, or standby letters of credit issued out of Zimbabwe to foreign counterparties as warranties that so-and-so shall perform, are often associated with stringent collateral rules. We often ask as banks to put forward cash collateral to back it up, which makes it very expensive and ties up a lot of liquidity which could be circulating. That space, I think we'll have to workshop with DFIs and see how we can, add the Reserve Bank to see how we can make it better. But otherwise, syndication also is critical. We haven't been working enough together as banks. We're starting to see a few transactions now on the mining sector where I sit, but we could see more of that.
Yeah. Isabella, please, a big round of applause for Isabella Nyoka. It's fascinating what we used to do in the past. Syndication was so important because there was no way one individual institution could do it alone. And of course, the products, the banking community, the financial services sector is critical. They are part of the ecosystem when it comes to attracting impact investment, particularly as it relates to sustainable development goals. P.S. Muguti, I'm going to bring you in, sir, because I know that you have an engagement pretty soon. We're talking here about impact investment and, of course, your portfolio, particularly being in the Office of the President, looking at the devolution part of it. I mean, the devolution, why it was brought in and the reason it was brought in also talks to the attraction of investment in those areas, particularly impact investment. Maybe you could link between the government's actions when it comes to devolution in over 10 provinces and how that creates the policy environment and the sustainability factor for investors to come in to bring their money.
Thank you very much. I think the first thing that we have to understand is that devolution is not a nice to have, it's the law subscribed in Chapter 14 of the Constitution. And it really was put into the Constitution to try and avail the capacity for provincial governments to exist and also for local governments to exist. Now, as I said before, one of the challenges that we've had is that we've operated as a centralized institution or government for a very long time. And we're going through those numbers that we're seeing being presented, and we're asking ourselves that we're lagging behind Mozambique, we're lagging behind even Namibia, we're lagging behind Mozambique. But if you look at those countries, they've decentralized investment promotion to a state where the different territories actually know what are their endowments. And if you look at our private sector today, they also do not taken a keen interest to follow through devolution. So the banks, the DFIs, everyone else, we're still centered. Anything that is big news is what everyone in Zimbabwe is running across. No one is going down to Lotito to say, what kind of opportunities are there that we can invest in? So the drive of government is to capacitate those provincial governments, those local authorities to know their endowments and actually have them acting as investment promotion agencies in their own right. So that's the first part. The second part as well is that I think it was well said by our international guest that if a country's DFIs and the banks in those countries cannot invest in their own economy, then it creates a challenge. That's why you'd find that whenever we talk about investment, we are also keen on foreign direct investment. Nobody is talking about the direct investment that we have from the locals. I can tell you that, especially for our international audience, that 95% of infrastructure, that means houses, malls and stuff, you're seeing being built in this country, is being built by Zimbabweans. And 95%, if not 100% of the houses that you see that people live in, businesses, the factories they build, is cash. So that shows you that there's a lot of liquidity in this country. But we now need to get to a point where we devolve our approach. What does each province have to offer? What are the comparative advantages? Once we start seeing syndicated funding going to projects by Zimbabwean banks, it makes it easier. One of the biggest outcries that we've had as government is that we have a lot of financial institutions who are making money, and I think the Reserve Bank governor is aware of it, the deputy governor. They're making money from not sweating the money they have through other loans and putting liquidity into the market, but by basically, others call it punishing the depositor. So you'd find that most of them have made money from deposit fees and etc., but very few of them have made money from actual investments back in the country. So if you look at it, that's why Zimbabwe is lagging behind. We don't have any private equity funds to talk about, but yet we've got a thriving, locally owned financial services sector, dollarized. So we need to start speaking truth to life, to say, as much as government can put in the policy framework, we are not the actors. The actors are the private sector. The actors are the global partners, and they need to put the flesh to the meat. Thank you.
So true. We have a belief, of course, that government is everything in Zimbabwe. You say blame the government, blame this. In fact, government is putting the enabling environment in for you to do business. Because it is you that actually drives economic growth, not the government. And I think that is a critical point to make. Thank you. Tabazo, I know that you have to go, but please, the Permanent Secretary, Engineer Tafazwa Muguti, he's the Secretary Presidential Affairs and Devolution in the Office of the President. Please give him a big round of applause. Unfortunately, he does have to leave. But thank you so much for your time and giving us 3 hours of your life this morning. And enjoy the trade fair. Thank you. Thank you, PS. Right. Now, before I get to the other banker and the economist on the panel, there is one area I think that we haven't really looked at sufficiently enough, but it talks to investors, it talks to predictability, and it also talks to investor confidence, and that is the ease of doing business, because that is so critical. And to talk about that, of course, from the Ministry of Finance, Special Advisor to the Minister, Professor Ashok Chakravarti. Prof, you know, it's all well and good saying we want to promote investment, we want to bring investors in here, we want impact capital to come in to drive our SDG impact investment, but at the same time, if it takes you a year to get a license, if it takes you 3 years to get this, if you have to get a strong arm to bring in different investors you don't want, we're just going to be blowing up in our own face. Talk to us about the steps Zimbabwe has taken, the Ministry of Finance has taken to ease doing business in Zimbabwe?
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies. So if I started on this, we'd be at it for the next hour, but I'll try and summarize it in the next 5 minutes. So I think Dr. Odusola and UNDP, they focused on the need for an investment architecture and an ecosystem on one hand. On the other hand, we have cross-boundary, which has talked about the billions and trillions of dollars which are available for investment and the projects that are there. And then we have ZIDA, which spends its time facilitating and assisting investors. So something seems to be missing over here, and I think that that's where the Ease of Doing Business initiative has come in. So we have His Excellency who has indicated that Zimbabwe is open for business. What does that mean? That means that we should have an enabling environment, a regulatory environment which is favorable for investment. And that has what been missing in the last, all the initiatives that have been taken to date. So you have the investors, you have the facilitators, you know, you don't have an environment which is favorable for investment. And that's the point that you're making. So it's all very well to say that, you know, we have ZIDA to facilitate, which is wonderful. But if Zambia is offering simple systems in which you can go in and invest with 1 or 2 regulations, 1 or 2 licenses, Kenya is offering something simple, whereas we have about 20 regulations and 20 licenses per investment, then obviously the investor, both domestic and foreign, is going to shy away from investment. So that is the focus of the Ease of Doing Business initiative, which was started last year in August. It's a presidential initiative, and it was approved by Cabinet. And let me just give you a flavor of it, and then, you know, we are happy to share information. So basically, over the last 9 months or so, there have been reviews of all sectors of the economy, starting with agriculture and livestock, telecoms, finance, construction, all the sectors. And basically, these have been interactions which have been chaired by the Office of the President and the Ministry of Finance, in which we have brought in the regulator and the regulated. So all the stakeholders have been brought in, and the regulators have always also been present. And there has been consideration of how we can streamline the business environment. So our focus has been, let me just give you some generic and cross-cutting issues, the kinds of things that we have done. We have tried to remove duplications and overlaps in licenses. We have tried to reduce and minimize export permits and regulations because we want to improve exports. We have regularized and standardized local authority fees. So my colleague from the PS from OPC has talked about the RDCs and devolution. But the unfortunate thing has been the RDCs have been focusing mainly on licensing and taxing the businesses in their particular areas rather than on investment promotion. So for the same function, you will have an RZC in Zaka charging $4,000 as fee. Somewhere else, closer to Harare, they might be charging $200. So this initiative has standardized all these fees across the board. So that's another initiative. Then we have taken a number of specific, I'll just talk about a few initiatives because there isn't much time, which of concern to UNDP, for instance. So in the area of energy, under this initiative, we have removed the licensing for any solar or hydro project which is under 50 megawatts, all gone. For units up to 100 megawatts, there's been a 50% reduction in licensing. We have also addressed the banking sector and indeed the Reserve Bank itself, as my colleague will. So we have reduced some of the fees of the Reserve Bank that they charge the banking sector. And we appreciate that very much. We are also focusing on the banking sector. They have introduced, my colleague didn't talk about it, but RBZ has been taking great initiative. Now we have something called a zero-cost bank account. And we are going further on that to reduce bank charges. Because it's too much for an individual to be charged $5 a month and for companies to be charged $20 a month. So we are working on all these things. In the meantime, you might have already noticed that there has been a reduction in the mobile and data charges and the transfer charges being put by the money platforms like Econet and others. All these things are happening under the initiative of ease of doing business. We've covered most of the economy, and now our focus is on implementation. There's been about changes in about 1,500 regulations, licenses, fees, and permits. And the World Bank has indicated that this is one of the deepest regulatory reforms ongoing in Africa at the moment. And I'd like to also congratulate UNDP for their strong assistance to this initiative, which has contributed to its success to date. But the public will be the judge of all of this. In the next few months, hopefully all these measures will come into law, because although the decisions have been approved by Cabinet, all these items have to be approved and statutory instruments have to be changed by the relevant MDAs, by the ministries and departments. That takes some time. So work is going on between the ministries and the Attorney General, the Office of the President and the Ministry of Finance to put all these 1,500 odd changes which have been put in place over the last 9 months into law, so that it directly benefits the private sector and it improves the enabling environment in Zimbabwe. So I think we're trying to link up the whole thing. You have, this was a key element which was missing, and hopefully that will make a big difference to the work that Cross Boundary and others are doing to bring investment into Zimbabwe. Thank you.
And Prof, before you wind up there, please, give Prof a big round of applause. Thank you. There also must be complementary measures taken to reduce these fees at the city council level and the local authorities, which I think City of Harare is doing. I think City of Bulawayo is also doing it, because it's all well and good as government reducing these fees, but if you want to get a license to operate in Harare and they're charging you 100,000, it kind of defeats the object. So you're working in liaison with local and rural authorities to also reduce fees?
Yes, I can confirm that we have worked very closely with the local authorities, and significant number of local authority charges and fees have also been reduced. In many cases, duplication has been eliminated. So for instance, local authorities would approve your building plans, and they also wanted you to take a building permit. It's a duplication, so we have cancelled the building permit. All this is going to come. The SIs will be coming out in due course to show these changes are in place. So I'm just giving you a flavor of what is happening, but it is all encompassing and throughout the economy. And this work is ongoing with support from UNDP. Thank you.
I think to quote the Reserve Bank Governor, now is the time to invest in Zimbabwe. The Deputy Governor, thank you so much, Prof. Chakravarti. So the Ministry of Finance is working hard to ensure the ease of doing business is second to none in Africa. I mean, even if you compare I think Zida can bring it down. I remember once we were talking months, then it became 2 weeks. Now I believe it's down to a few days. So you can see that that process of investors coming in is really working, because that's what investors want. Well, they want it all under one roof.
The idea is to make Zida's life very simple, so that they do not have to facilitate an investor to get 20 permits. Maybe he doesn't need any permits at all.
Perfect. Thank you. Prof, give him a round of applause, Prof. Chakravarti. Thank you. Right, I'm now going to get to the other financier. Before we get to the economist, let's talk to Mr. Clifford Mutameri, Executive Head, Corporate Institutional Banking, National Building Society. Clifford, what would help domestic financial institutions play a stronger role in originating, structuring, or co-financing SDG-aligned instruments? I think that's a key with domestic financial services.
Thanks very much, Andy. And I think this already is one of the solutions, what we are doing currently in this hall, because once we get to share ideas and to hear what the other side is looking at and what they're looking for is what is important. The second thing is that as NBS, we've also been heavily involved going beyond talking and actually going into action item. We have found and we've been seeing a lot of things that have been assisting us to really go through it. So the first thing has been the project preparation. A lot of the times is that we do have bankable projects, but I don't think we've presented them well. I think it was given as an example to say we have not sold our most positive elements at times. And I think that is what is key, and I think that's what we've been doing in trying to create projects that actually work. Then the other side to it is that when you then go into some of these financial institutions, or maybe not financial institutions, but the supply side, there is a demarcation. I want to demarcate between banks that are probably owned by government and then banks that are private sector. There's always a distinction there, and there's always things that need to be done around that. I think one of the things that we need to look at is some form of blended financing, so that if the government can come in, for example, not subsidizing, but to catalyst, to put a catalyst to promoting investment into the country. So you find that once they do that, you then have commercial, and you've also got private sector banks coming in to assist that. I think the other side to it also is that when I look at my partner here, EcoBank, we have to work together as financial institutions. You find that some of the projects seem so small, and sometimes they're not reflective to what is actually being required to be invested in, speaking to syndication. But I think we have to be a bit more deliberate, and I think thanks to Zida for this initiative that will allow us to at least have one common platform that we can be able to to do these things. The last thing that I can talk about in terms of capacitating the domestic side of things is to have these partnerships that we have. We have a partnership with the UNDP, and thanks to James and team, and this has also helped us in understanding how we can be able to invest and get funding that is impactful. I think
so in essence, there are investment structures that Zimbabwe can put in place that can attract impact capital and obviously bankable projects in Zimbabwe, from your view and from the financial sector's view?
Well, certainly they are, and I think it's something that we are looking at ensuring that we're able to meet, for example, our mandate. Our mandate as NBS is affordable housing, and what we have to do is to make sure that we are able to structure around getting that affordability side of things. So key elements to that are issues to do with pricing of the financing, issues to do with the cost of construction, issues to do with affordability or capacity for them to be able to get that financing.
I think many companies in Zimbabwe complain we can't access capital, we can't access finance, the funding costs are too expensive and so forth. I think that is what you hear from industry. But it's clear that there can be structures put in place that can achieve business objectives without that pure vanilla. I think we got to a point in Zimbabwe where you want to get money, you go to a bank and ask for a loan. Overseas, you don't do that. I think very few people actually get loans from banks. They put into structures or some form of investment structures that allows them to invest and spread their risk and also make profit. Thank you so much for those comments, Clifford. Appreciate it. Cornelius Dube, Doctor, Chief Economist, Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries. Cornelius, I'm going to ask you two specific questions, and I'd like you from a CZI's perspective, talking with your economist hat, as well as, of course, the leading representative of industry in Zimbabwe. Two questions. Where do you see the strongest demand for investment that could improve productivity, competitiveness, and long-term growth? That's the first question. And my second question is, how do we ensure that that impact investment, that conversation does not just remain abstract, but actually responds to what productive firms need on the ground? That's for you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the first question, generally, when we're talking about investment, we actually have to relate it to the actual policy aspirations of government. I think under NDS 1, we talked about structural transformation, which did not take place. Now we're NDS 2, we're still talking about structural transformation. Why? Because the kind of investment and the priorities that are reflected in our investment policies sounds divorced from our desire for structural transformation. I'll give you examples. Let's talk about the structure in terms of what needs to be transformed. Let's talk about primary dependence of this economy. I think we know that we aspire to be an upper middle income economy by 2030, which the Deputy Governor says is achievable. But if you look at the structure of upper middle income economies in general, on average, the secondary sector contribution to GDP is between 30 to 35%, and ours is still no less than about 20% at the moment. So that means the kind of investment that we should be seeing is the one that tries to transform the structure of our economy. In other words, the red carpets and the special preferences that we give to FDI, that is largely divorced from the structural transformation objectives that we have, could actually be counterproductive. Let's look at exports. We are saying we have managed to receive, we're happy with the kind of export receipts that we have. But the manufacturing sector, in terms of the actual export receipts that the reserve being received, in 2025, manufacturing sector contributed 2% of those. If we look from 2021, it was just 3%, 4% in 2023. So now what are we saying? We're saying the kind of investment that we need is the one that is actually going to transform our over-dependence on raw materials, which are subject to international commodity price movements, which leads to investment in manufacturing. The FDI that we are trying to promote, can we try at least to get it to boost manufacturing, leveraging on primary products? We are doing well in terms of primary sectors, and we are exporting. But can we not have a layer of some investment so that we are trying to deliberately promote that can actually help us leverage on the booming private sector to do that? I think that is where basically we are missing in terms of investment. We don't see investment that is trying to do to promote manufacturing. And at most times, the structure of our policy investments itself, they try to be good intentions, they end up being counterproductive. For example, we give special economic zones to somebody who is investing in already invested capacity sectors. In manufacturing sector capacity, we have about 44% of idle capacity in the manufacturing sector as we are speaking. But we still see, probably if we look at beverages and food sectors, that's where we have 70% or 63% thereabouts capacity utilization. The rest, they're just struggling with their capacity. But then we see an investor coming into these sectors already characterized by over-investment. What it simply means, in fact, most of those investors, they don't pay tax because they're getting incentives. So what it simply means is that they are actually driving further under capacity utilization of already existing firms. And these ones are not paying taxes, so we're not even realizing the revenue objectives from government. So I think we need to be more deliberate that if we say we want to do these investments trying to promote, let's have a policy that directs them to where it fits within our current objectives. Yes.
Finish if you like.
Yes. So now we are also seeing challenges. In fact, if we look at the policy environment itself, there are so many occasions where people are still talking about policy inconsistencies or policy shocks, if you might want to call them. Where are we seeing policy shocks? We see an announced policy today, and we are told that it takes place with immediate effect. Immediately, when we are announcing it, it's already in effect. But 2 weeks ago, somebody made a decision to ship. A shipment is already in the sea, coming into Zimbabwe. And that shipment was made, the decision was made on a different policy environment to the one that is obtaining when the shipment comes into the country. So I think, while we're talking about investment promotion, we also need to be thinking about all this. And in addition to that, there are so many actors that are involved in investment promotion, and they're not necessarily focused on the same objectives. So the conversation, they're not always there when you're talking. Somebody's talking about here, we're talking about we need to promote structural transformation, but there are also other objectives that investment could bring, and they're also busy negotiating them elsewhere. So the reason why, probably related to your second question, why we are not seeing much movement is that we don't have a centralized objective list. Or shall I say, we need to be clear to say, when we talk about investment in Zimbabwe, what do we seek to achieve is A, B, C, D. We are so, they're not there, what is it called? So many actors that are promoting investment in their own different circles. And at times the objectives they're not in sync, they end up actually clashing. I think that is what I can say to your question.
Thank you. Dr. Klinger-Stube, please give him a big round of applause. It's an interesting point he makes, because we want investors to come in, okay? A lot of investment is coming into the mining sector, and that is fantastic. Yeah, the iron and steel plants, the chrome, platinum, and so forth, that's great. But as Dr. Cornelius Stube says, we also need to get investment into the manufacturing sector. We need to boost our productivity, satisfy local demand, as well as now satisfy exports. So it's a question of taking investment in. Yes, we must take that in. We want investment in, but let's hope that we can channel some of that investment to some of the areas that will boost productivity, boost manufacturing, and boost our economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please thank our panel? Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I know we don't have time for questions, but they are available for you to talk to them during the lunch break. So please, Mr. Clifford Mutameri, Executive Head, Corporate Institutional Banking, thank you. Ms. Isabel Nyoka, Head of Mining, Finance, EcoBank Group. Dr. Cornelius Stube, Chief Economist, CZI, and of course, P.S. Muguti, who's left us, unfortunately, thank you. And last but not least, Professor Ashok Chakravarti, Chief Advisor to the Minister of Finance. Ladies and gentlemen, give them a big round of applause, please. Thank you so much. Well done, ladies and gentlemen. Right, we're coming to the end, but there is one thing I do have to do. We have to play the video. Is the video ready? Okay, hang on. Oh, is there a few questions you would like to take? I tell you what, why don't you sit down? No, sit down, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay, come and sit here. No, come and sit. Yeah, come and sit, don't worry. Come and sit on your chairs, yeah, if there's a question. Anyone would like to take a few questions? We do have a little bit of time. I know we did run a bit late, but if there are any specific questions from Prof. Chakravarti, the CZI is here, the bankers are here. In fact, we have pretty much a lot of the stakeholders in this room that the ecosystem that Marcos was talking about. Going once, twice? Ah, it's a comment. Hold on.
The cross-boundary that's really driving the process of assessment should take opportunity of having the Reserve Bank and Ministry of Finance here to be sure they're part of the interview process so that we can get more in-depth insight into some of the things we're looking for. I think they've done a lot of things. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's good for us to get direct feedback from them. I think that will help a lot.
Okay. So we're talking here about further collaboration, communication, Ministry of Finance, Reserve Bank, conversations happening across boundary to put more into the report than is already there, which is a lot. And as I said, you will be getting a copy of it. Right, there, please go ahead. Do you want to say your name and organization?
Okay, thank you. And one of the things at that time, UNDP actually launched a publication that actually was looking at value chains, different value chains. And one of the things that I'm actually seeing missing in this discussion of impact investments is around the bottom-up value chains from the smallholder or the informal sector or the entrepreneur. So that's one element that's missing here. And the biggest gap that I've actually seen in this discussion is actually the role of remittances, both external remittances that come from the diaspora, but also domestic remittances, because if you see the way Zimbabwe has changed the economy itself, you'll find that the economy is no longer just the urban-rural divide, but there's actually a very big dynamic happening between the rural-urban nexus. For example, I'll give you something that the Reserve Bank now takes very seriously, the artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector, and I understand it has now contributed over 60% to gold revenues. But no one is really putting impetus to that, because that sector is essentially a rural sector, but it's actually the dynamic that is driving all the economic activities that you are seeing, the housing that you speak to, issues around the malls, the different petrol stations that you are seeing going up. So I believe that as you develop this impact initiative, we are happy to contribute some of the things that we developed with UNDP at that time, especially on remittances, not just diaspora, but even domestic remittances, but also these value chains that are aligned to rural-urban nexus. So these are just my points. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I think this is exactly why we're here. We're here to get ideas and comments from stakeholders, and we're going to put together a comprehensive SDG impact analysis. I think this is exactly it. Thank you so much for those comments, because this is how we get things right, by communicating and talking and opening up our conversations. Thank you so much. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Right, you know, it's funny, I say this, you know, I'm getting tired of people telling me there's an informal sector. When your informal sector is 70% of your economy, it's formal. Am I wrong? Yeah, you see my point? How you can have an informal sector that runs 70% of your economy? It's pretty formal. So it's pretty interesting how we have to relook at some of the things that we think aren't there, but actually, if it drives the economy, like he talked about the remittances over what, 2.5 billion, Deputy Governor, I think it is, US dollars, that's a lot of money. But of course, how do we railroad that to make it impact capital that can make an impact to our investment landscape? Thank you so much for that. Right, we are coming up to a bit of a close. I do apologize for running a bit late, but I think it was worth it. So we're going to play a quick video, then we'll ask the Deputy Rep of the UNDP to give us some closing remarks. So please can we play the video?
Traditional investing asks one question: will this generate a return? Impact investing asks two: will this generate a return, and will it create measurable social or environmental benefits? This is no longer a niche idea. According to the Global Impact Investing Network, GIIN, the global impact investing market is now estimated at $1.571 trillion United States dollars, managed by more than 3,900 organizations worldwide. And it is growing. GIIN estimates that the impact investing market has grown at a 21% compound annual growth rate since 2019, a sign that more investors are looking for opportunities that combine returns with measurable impacts. Africa is part of that story. The 2025 mapping by 30 estimates that Africa's impact investing market represents between $70 and $80 billion in assets under management. The same 30 paper notes that GIIN data would imply a somewhat higher figure of around $94 billion for Africa. So, the clearest takeaway is this: Africa's impact investing market is already measured in tens of billions of dollars. For Zimbabwe, this matters because the country's development ambitions are large, and so is the financing gap. Public finance alone cannot meet the scale of investment needed in energy, agriculture, infrastructure, resilience, and inclusive growth. That is why impact investing matters. It can help mobilize private capital into areas that matter for development. So where does Zimbabwe sit today? Zimbabwe is best understood as an emerging impact investment market, a country with real potential if the right conditions are strengthened. That is why this moment is important. Zimbabwe is an opportunity to build credibility with investors through better market information, stronger partnerships, more visible deal flow, and practical reforms that reduce uncertainty. Several sectors are already showing promise. These include agriculture, renewable energy, infrastructure, climate resilience, digital connectivity, and financial inclusion, areas where investment can support jobs, productivity, resilience, and access to essential services. This is where the forthcoming Zimbabwe Impact Investment Map comes in. Still under development, it is not a final list of investment-ready deals. It is a market-building tool designed to help identify where opportunities may exist, what kind of capital they may need, and what barriers may still be holding investment back. It looks at three things. First, the opportunity pipeline, where investment possibilities may be emerging. Second, the capital landscape, which investors may be relevant and what they look for. Third, the enabling environment, the policies, institutions, and market conditions that can either support or constrain impact investment. In simple terms, the map is meant to reduce guesswork. It can help investors better understand Zimbabwe, it can help businesses better understand investor expectations, and it can help stakeholders see where reforms or de-risking measures may be needed to unlock more capital. So what comes next? The next step is to continue the analysis, validate findings with stakeholders, sharpen the opportunity areas, map relevant investors, and turn evidence into practical recommendations. The goal is not only to understand Zimbabwe's impact investment landscape, but to help strengthen it. Zimbabwe may still be an emerging market in impact investing, but the opportunity is real. And with the right information, institutions, partnerships, and follow-through, impact investing can become an important part of financing progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Traditional investing asks...
Well, there we have it, guys. Great video. Please, big round of applause for that. Really appreciate that. Right, we are coming to the end of our dialogue this morning. So, to give us some closing remarks, please put your hands together for the Deputy Resident Representative, UNDP, Mr. Chala Getachew. Chala, thank you. Please, round last one, guys, last time.
Thank you. Oops. In the interest of time, I will write down all the protocols already observed. If I attempt to summarize this discussion, I wouldn't do service. So I'll just give a few remarks, and then I'm very sure that our team will be working hard to summarize, synthesize information that came out of this discussion, and you will have access to that information. I would like to thank you all for giving your time. You have been very patient on behalf of UNDP and our resident representative, Dr. Ayo here. Let me begin by sincerely thanking our co-convener and partner, Zida, Cross-Boundary, our moderator, very able moderator here. Our panelists, government representative, financial institutions, potential investors in the room, and all participants for a very rich and practical discussion today. What has come through clearly is that Zimbabwe's opportunity is real, but so too is the work required to unlock it, especially on the ease of doing business side and the financial sector. Things that need to be regularized and simplified to capitalize and take advantage of the resources that are out there. Today's discussion has reaffirmed that impact investing is no longer a niche conversation globally. As our resident representative in his remarks mentioned earlier, the global impact investing network estimates that the market has reached 1.6 trillion in assets under management across 3,900 organizations worldwide. That scale matters because it shows that more investors are actively looking for opportunities that combine financial returns with measurable social and environmental impact. And this is particularly relevant for our region. And according to the Global Impact Investing Network, earlier mentioned in Dr. Ayo's remarks, most of them, more than 53% of them, have declared that they would increase their investment in Africa in the coming 5 years. And Zimbabwe needs to be ready to take advantage of that opportunity. The question, therefore, is not only whether capital exists. The question is whether we are building the conditions that allow that capital to flow with confidence, credibility, and purpose. And that's a key purpose of what we have been doing here. The SDG Impact Investment Map is not an end by itself. As mentioned this morning, there are a number of countries that have the map already in place. It is a practical tools that help strengthen market intelligence, reduce fragmentation, and support more informed engagement between investors, public institutions, financial institutions, and development partners. But the data alone will not be enough, as we understand. What will matter most is follow-through, refining the pipelines, sharing the evidence that is generating intelligence, identifying the constraints that can be solved, and sustaining a practical dialogue across institutions, platforms like this that bring the key partners together. No single institution can build that ecosystem alone, and I think that what we learned today. We have the Reserve Bank, we have the Ministry of Finance, and there are a number of key players that are not in the room, including the Parliament, for example, if some regulations and laws have to be amended. For our part, UNDP remains committed to supporting this process as a development partner, a convener, and a connector, working with all of you to help translate today's discussion into practical steps. Let's therefore carry forward the momentum from this event with focus, consistency, and collaboration. Because ultimately the goal is not simply to attract more capital. The goal is to help shape capital that supports jobs, resilience, inclusion, and sustainable development outcomes for Zimbabwe. And we look forward to working with all the partners, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for those closing remarks. The Deputy Resident Representative, UNDP, Mr. Chala Getachew. Thank you so much indeed. Well, we've come to the end. Just quickly, if you're going to get your lunch tickets, you can get it at the desk. So, you need to give yourself a clap. But here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go 1, 2, and on 3, you clap. Okay, 1, 2, I never said 3. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great time at Trade Fair. Enjoy yourselves. I'm Andy Hodges. Thank you, goodbye, and please, you all be safe.